This is NDTV, and you're watching Classics.
Hello and welcome to Reality Bites. Jammu and Kashmir is at the center of international attention again, with the Americans exerting pressure like never before for a direct dialogue on Kashmir. But as Ajmal Jami and I found out after a week in the valley, the real tragedy often unfolds away from the cameras. For the first time, a media team was allowed to film inside Srinagar's only psychiatric hospital. We bring you this special report. The world's gaze today is fixed on the snow-swept streets of Srinagar. But here they tell you that the hope for peace froze a long time ago. For outsiders, these are the only images that define Kashmir. But it's long after the headlines have faded that the real stories begin. Stories that never get told in print or on camera, but live on as silent shadows within the mind. The ever-spinning wheel of violence hasn't just altered the external landscape of the valley. It's also left its indelible imprint on the very psyche of the Kashmiri people. In 1990, when the separatist movement was just taking shape, only 1,762 people were diagnosed with mental disorders. A decade of crushing violence later, in the year 2000, doctors put the number at 38,696. And this, they say, is only the tip of the iceberg. It's the story of a people battered from within, and it's a difficult story to chronicle. In the entire valley, there is only this solitary hospital that caters for mental disorders, and cameras are usually prohibited here. We are allowed to film under strict conditions that whenever asked, we will guard the identity of the patients here. We wait with Dr. Mushtaq Margoob, the state's most famous psychiatrist, and also a kind of messiah for thousands of Kashmiris. Soon we get a glimpse into the private hell that makes up these lives. We meet a young girl whose face we are not allowed to film. She saw a stray bullet kill her father and for years lost the will to live.
She had been suffering very badly, terribly. Her father got killed some 8 years back, bullet injuries, and she saw his body, mutilated almost, that body, and then she completely withdrew from all social and other activities. She refused to go to school, and finally she refused to take even her meals.
And then there's a man whose identity we cannot disclose either, who was trapped inside the Hazratbal shrine for more than a month when it was taken over by militants in 1993.
He says that it was almost बिल्कुल जी मौत सामने रहती थी, हर वक्त रहती थी. मैं तो खुदा को याद करने गया था वहाँ, तो मुझे तो लग रहा है कि खुदा साहब ने वहीं से मुझे बुलाने की सोची है. तो this kind of he would do it. And still he has that foreshortened future. He says, डॉक्टर साहब सीधी सी बात आपको को मुझे अभी भी लगता है मैं बिल्कुल ठीक नहीं हो जाऊँगा. क्या रखा है मेरी ज़िंदगी में, क्या आगे रखा है.
The doctors then lead us inside the women's ward. Till the 90s, these were the only people who ever came here, the clinically ill, who were in actual need of hospitalization, or those who had been abandoned by their families because of the social stigma attached to mental illness.
गाड़ी में छोड़ दो ना मुझको. छोड़ देंगी. चिट्ठी लिख कर दे दो, मुझे गाड़ी में छोड़ो.
This was once the typical profile of a patient here. Heartbreakingly depressing, but charted territory for most doctors. Then came 1990 and it all changed. Doctors chronicling this change write, beginning 1990, the whole population of Kashmir was abruptly exposed to severe stress, arising out of mass destruction of life and property, overwhelming fear and uncertainty. It is well documented that exposure to this kind of stress means more and more apparently normal people suffer from palpitations, insomnia, anxiety disorder, hysteria, depression, and even major disturbances. This is the main ward in the psychiatric hospital here. This is where the most serious psychotic and schizophrenic patients are admitted. There was a time when these patients made up the bulk of the cases in this hospital, like indeed in any other psychiatric hospital in the country and the world. But today in Kashmir, that trend has completely changed. These patients today make up only 1% of the cases the doctors here are handling. Instead, every single day, hundreds of Kashmiris throng the OPD clinics in this hospital, complaining of anxiety, depression, and trauma. It's a trauma that can be triggered off by the very memory or mention of violence. Do you find that in the cases that come here, which are trauma cases, there has generally been a history of seeing violence?
Yes, always, almost always. They have either witnessed the event themselves, or they have heard about it, or they have seen a dead body. Most of them are the patients there. And many times we have seen a very fascinating event that people come to here not after the event only, but after that there is some triggering event, small sort of event. For example, they hear about some other event, which was not that violent as was the previous.
Like a grenade blast.
Yes, they heard about it. They saw it on the TV, and next day they come with the symptoms. We have seen that phenomenon also.
And even in this land of pitched battles, there are no favourites and no exceptions. Ironically, the unsparing quality of life seems to have bridged the political divide. Outside the hospital, men from the security forces line up alongside ordinary civilians.
क्या हो गया आपको?
ऐसे ही थोड़ी डिप्रेशन,
किस तरह के डिप्रेशन?
ऐसे ही थोड़ी परेशानी रहनी, मन बेचैन रहना, नॉर्मल सा है, कोई मेरे को मालूम नहीं होता।
कुछ टेंशन भी रहती है कि कहीं कभी कुछ हो ना जाए, कुछ वो आकस्मिक चीज़ें?
नहीं, ऐसा तो नहीं है।
अच्छा,
मेरे साथी उल्टे सीधे मजाक करते रहते हैं, ऐसे मैं बिल्कुल सीरियस रहता हूँ, भाई करते हैं तो करने दो।
हाँ।
कभी ऐसे ही पूछेंगे।
तो कब से इस तरह का चल रहा था?
ये 2-3 साल हो गए। मैं ठीक हो गया था, अच्छी ड्यूटी कर रहा था। कभी मेरा दिल करता है ड्यूटी करने को, मैं डॉक्टर को बोलता हूँ मेरे को हथियार दो, मैं ड्यूटी करना चाहता हूँ।
अच्छा।
तो डॉक्टर साहब बोलते हैं नहीं, पहले डॉक्टर साहब से फिट फाइल लिखाएंगे, तब ड्यूटी आपको हथियार दिया जाएगा। वैसे मेरा फायरिंग अच्छा आया, मेरे को भेजा गया था, मैं 8 यूनिटों में फर्स्ट आया था।
अच्छा।
मेरे को इनाम भी मिला था, सर्विस रिकॉर्ड में भी लिखा गया। पता नहीं, फिर ऐसे ही थोड़ी बहुत टेंशन से मेरे को